If you look closely, you can see Teledor just up next to Bahamut's crux. See? He flickers with green and blue light when he's not silvery. Tally was silent beside me.
I guess.
Her voice was profoundly uninterested. I was a little disappointed. What could be better than being stretched out like this on the fresh, clean snow, so comfortable, and gazing up at those beautiful silvery fires and flashes in the sky? They are mesmerizing. A snort.
I guess. It's kind of hard to focus when your scales are glittering and sparkling right beside my head.
I was flattered, and looked down with pleasure at my legs and breast. The transparent, diamond-hard scales seemed to gather and magnify the light from above, and throw it out with ever greater lightliness. Motes of white, blue, red, green, and golden light danced on the pure canvas of snow spread out around me. They are quite nice, aren't they? Tally glared up at me, her dull white snout pulled into a snarl of displeasure.
They're fine. And I'll never have anything like them. I'll always be ugly.
That's not so, I exclaimed, perhaps a little too quickly. Your scales will turn a beautiful, pure white someday, and you'll blend into the snow so that no one will see you unless you want them to.
Yeah, maybe.
Tally suddenly rolled onto her belly and jumped up, her wings unfurling over my head, cutting off the lovely starlight and dimming my scales.
This is boring. Let's go beat up some polar bears. It'll be awesome. You can distract them, and I'll sneak up on them and...
Snap! Her jaws clapped shut with sudden ferocity.
They will never know what hit them. Please, Uncle?
I sighed inwardly. This little project was not progressing as I had hoped. Tally was trying her best. I know she was. It was so much easier to take the wormling out of the white dragon culture than it was to take the white dragon viciousness out of the wormling. It might be better, after all, to simply snap her neck and rid the world of a source of evil and destruction, rather than risk the possibility that all of my teaching would end up being in vain. I pondered, then said softly, Tally, come here. There's something I need to show you. She turned back to look at me as I rose, my scales gathering starlight and rekindling in fierce cold flame.
All right, and then the polar bears?
We'll see.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. I'm Tom Gross.
And I am Dan Ream.
And that was a marvelous story. Reminded me of everything I did in my research for today's topic. Well done. You got a lot into that story about the dragons we're going to talk about today on our show here in the dungeon. We're going to discuss crystal dragons.
Yes. And for you scientists out there, they are classed as a gem dragon, even though I learned in my research crystals are not gems.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Crystal is simply a lattice structure. It is not in and of itself a gem. So it still works for me to call them crystal dragons, but the purists might say quartz dragons or diamond dragons. But
I noticed. Okay, lattice. What's the structure? Lattice structure?
I believe it's a lattice structure, and any gem has it.
Okay.
It's calcite has it. It's just a way that atoms arrange themselves.
Okay. Well, I noticed when you said like quartz dragon or something like that we'll talk about later, but quartz is something that shows up in the area of where a dragon lives.
Right.
So I didn't make the connection. I did make the connection of, quartz. And then I moved on because it didn't strike me as something that was a gem. But alrighty, well, very good. Welcome to the dungeon, everybody. If this is your first time, thanks for joining us. And if you've been with us for a while, well, you've created a path down the hole into the dungeon.
You know where you're going.
We have a seat for you right here in our cave-like structure. How do you picture the dungeon? Is this a dungeon that is like a cave system, like Wave Echo Cave? Or is this a dungeon that has been hewn by dwarven and gnomes craftedly? We'll have to think about that for a little bit.
I think maybe it's an abandoned structure the goblins have sort of just kind of taken over.
That's how I've always thought of it. All right, well, very good. Hey, before we get too far into the show, wanted to congratulate Andrew K. Wood, who was on the show just a few weeks ago. His book, Ghosts of Wrath, was funded on BackerKit, and so we're thrilled about that. That is the third book of his adventure series, glad to see that.
Yes, it does. It looks almost visually. It seems like a bit of a departure
From the others.
which is not. I think that's cool. I think
No,
it's,
I thought so as well. Because the other one deals with fae and woods feel like the Mushroom King and so forth. And this one looks very much more piratey or undead and something like that. So I'm excited to get it. And if you are wondering what that's all about, go back a couple weeks and Andrew talks to us all about the Ghosts of Wrath. But congratulations. Glad to see that got funded. All right. Let's see. Crystal Dragons.
well, other news.
Other news.
The campfire also got funded.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes. Campfire was funded also on Backer Kit. We're especially excited about that because one of our students, current students, soon to be former student, Tears.
Yes.
She will be published in that book with her story starter.
Yes.
So we were just talking before we came on. It was in the school newspaper, and so really excited for her, but also for Campfire because that looks like a really cool project.
Well, she would have found her way regardless.
Yes.
But I maybe to take a tiniest bit of credit, I remember last year in summer camp, or maybe the year before that, she mentioned in summer camp that she appreciated getting to talk to Andrew K. Wood and publishers, and that made her. I don't think it made her want to do that. I think she already did, but it sort of strengthened that desire, and so then she's been clearly kind of pursuing that and finding ways to, if not make this a career, at least make this a continuing part of her creative life.
Right. And sometimes I know as a student, it was reaffirming to see someone who does what you do, or what you want to do, rather, what you want to do. I always wanted to be in radio when I was in high school, like just sitting on the airs, WKRP in Cincinnati. And, it wasn't until I went to an actual radio station and saw the studio and saw people broadcasting in person. It's not that I didn't know they didn't do it. It's just like, people know people write books, but seeing that environment confirmed for me, this is something I want to pursue in life. And so it might have been something like that, but no, super excited for her and for Campfire. That's a small step to something bigger. So, all right, what else did I forget?
I think we can jump into the Crystal Dragons now.
Okay, very good, very good. So, Crystal Dragons, you'd mentioned earlier that they are part of the Gem Dragons, and we had discussed the Amethyst in the past.
Yes.
That's the only other Gem Dragon, though, correct, that we've discussed?
So far, yes.
Okay. And I promise, whenever we did Amethyst Dragons a couple of months ago, I said my next dungeon will have an Amethyst Dragon in it. And it's been 2 dungeons since. The next dungeon will have the Amethyst Dragon. Just schedules kind of got in the way, and some. Oh, let's see. The Wave Echo Cave is sort of the precursor of the dungeon we're going to talk about that has the.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I was going to do it, but
makes sense.
So we have a Gem Dragon coming up in a dungeon soon.
Okay.
A dungeon coming to you soon. So, Crystal Dragons.
Yes, so we've got the same pattern we've been following. So we've got lore, behavior, notable named dragons, habitat, stats and abilities, how to use in the campaign, how to role play. So, I don't know, start with lore?
Sure.
Okay. So these are, and actually I'm going to maybe kind of pass it back and forth because you're the historian a little bit more than me when it comes to history of these creatures in the actual game. There's not a whole lot about them. And I had kind of assumed they were just invented whole cloth for 5th edition, but that's not really the case, is it?
No, it's funny you say that because usually when you go to the Forgotten Realms wiki, you get several pages of information, and the Crystal Dragon it's brief comparatively.
Yes.
So I was checking the notes at the end of the wiki, and it looks like probably the most common use of it, the first common use of it was in 3rd edition. It shows up probably as stat block. When you told me that it was in 3rd edition, I was like, oh, great. I'll go look at my books and I'll bring it for research. And I don't have 3rd edition Monster Manual. Nor do I have.
Sad day in the Gross household.
It was, because not only do I not have the 3rd edition Monster Manual, the Crystal Dragon shows up in Monster Manual 2 of 3rd edition. So now I have 2 books I need to get to fill my my collection hole. But
I was going to let it go.
I tried to.
Fill the gap in my collection.
Fill the gap in my collection. Yeah, that was redundant, which is, I think, why it sounded funny. Anyway, the 3rd edition is where the Crystal Dragon showed up, and then it has a couple mentions in Dragon Magazine, and then moves into 5th edition after Wizards had purchased the game.
And it's a shame because this is a particularly fun one.
It is. It is.
I think it is. It really lends itself to, in some ways, a wider range of use in gameplay because of its characteristics, its demeanor.
I would agree. It's not the dragon that's showing up to try to eat you.
Right.
You know, as your story had pointed out, there sometimes can be mischief, but generally it's a pretty positive presence. You know, the mischief isn't for like evil purposes. The mischief is just for fun. And that's something that they look for is ways to kind of enjoy life.
So it really corresponds to the brass dragon, I think.
Okay.
In that way. So, and actually that, I will say that's almost a problem in the lore, but we'll get back to that here in a second. So it's funny you say positive. It is connected to the positive plane. That's where they are mostly found. So they are quite rare, just like other gem dragons. You don't find them very often at all. They're also connected to starlight. Starlight seems to have an effect on them. Connected to that, they are... Well, actually, sorry, we'll get back to that here in a second. As far as to look at, the ancient crystal dragon scales are clear. They bend and refract light, so they make the dragon hard to see clearly.
Right.
Which I think is a really cool concept.
It's like driving into the sunrise when you have a windshield that's, you know, maybe a little fuzzy, and then you can't see clearly. You've got like everything has sort of that like glimmer to it.
Like you see a limb and then you don't, and
that
honestly,
that's cool.
Out of all the dragons, this is the one that, like, as goofy as it is, this would be the one I'd like to see most in real life.
Oh yeah,
just to see that's a cool concept.
I thought it had a very angelic. When I read that part, I thought you might be able to confuse it for something angelic because of the way it potentially could come down in that shimmery sort of way, which might lead to some sort of an adventure storyline or something where there's a mistaken identity by an NPC that sends you on an adventure. You think you're looking for something angelic when it's actually a dragon.
Okay. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So starlight type energy glows from their spines and their horns. Their horns show the mood of the dragon, so that's very similar to the amethyst. And there's an overlap with the amethyst.
It floats, just like the amethyst.
Their horns float like the amethyst dragons do, and they have some psionic or telepathic abilities as well.
Yeah.
So that's all I've got for looks. Lore and behavior, I guess, kind of blends together. So that's really all I've got for appearance. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
The horns, I wrote down in my notes, I said, this reminds me of a cat. You can, like, when a cat is angry, it pins its ears back. When it's attentive, its ears are straight up.
Oh, that's,
you know, and like the cat shows emotion with its ears, and that kind of reminded me of the horns. Doing kind of the same sort of thing.
Well, it's funny you'd say that. That's apparently the people that created How to Train Your Dragon thought the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because those dragons are very cat-like.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right.
I don't, you know, and it's a connection I would never make on my own. But the way this is described, I can totally see how you would think that.
there's two things I want to mention, and if you mentioned it, just say I was listening, but maybe I wasn't. I don't know.
One of those days, folks.
Yes, it is. So when they're born, the wormling crystal dragon is born with like grayish scales. And your story did a little switcheroo on me because it deals with a little bit of the lore of a crystal dragon, but a crystal dragon wormling has gray scales, and as it grows, the scales become a little bit more white, and then when it becomes an ancient dragon, it then fades to that crystal, clear, transparent, shimmery type of scales. So there is a transition of what the scales look like. Now, to be clear, when it is an adult dragon, those white scales will have crystalline tips. So that's how you would tell the difference between a white dragon and a crystal dragon, I suppose. I'm sure there are other differences. The floating horns would be another dead ringer. But then another lore piece that will, I think, lead us to our next part is they're a non-aggressive dragon, but they have a particular hatred for one type of creature. And probably I would even go even deeper and say one particular type of that creature, and that is giants. They have no love of giants, especially frost giants. Again, back to your story, a crystal dragon's lair is typically in the ice and snow, and so that kind of gives some explanation of maybe why there's a territorial issue, but less territorial and more that frost giants are known to capture crystal dragons and use them as slaves or pets or something like that.
And that ties in, I remember that, again, part of the deep lore of D&D, maybe it's one of the particular realms, you'll be able to tell me better, that in the deep past, there was a massive war between dragons and giants in general. So this might be a fragment of that.
Yeah, I don't know anything specific on it, but I would bet.
I wonder if the metallics and the chromatics worked together in that war.
I do not know. Challenge accepted. I'm writing it down right now. I'm going to find out. I'm going to bet yes.
I could see.
And that's where Bahamut and Tiamat separated? Maybe? I don't know. I'm gonna check on that.
I could see the blues helping out and working together honorably with the chromatics. I don't know about the metallics, but I don't know about the others.
All right.
I'd be curious to see.
I'm looking it up next time.
So we've got a fork in the path here. We can either go into the behavior you mentioned, or we could talk about habitat first.
Let's talk about behavior.
Okay. So this is where I've got one of the few quotes actually about crystal dragons.
Okay.
Shimmering with light, among the friendliest, nurturing, and most optimistic of dragons. And yet, the gem dragons are supposed to be neutral. So this is the one thing where I if I had to say, I would guess that the writers they'd set the parameters for themselves. Metallics are good, chromatics are evil, gems are neutral, and then created this one and just shoehorned it in anyway, even though it doesn't really fit. I mean, everything about it is good as far as I can tell. I would say so. And here is where my mind went, because I had to double take when I read this, because they are the alignment that's assigned to them, which I know alignment is very flux, but the alignment that's assigned to them is chaotic neutral. And so chaotic sort of is just what it says. And so I was like, okay, so it's neutral, but it does things in the way that it sees as right, and it sees that being positive or connecting to the positive realm is the right thing to do. So it gives it that good nature. I also look at the crystal dragons as they are the cub fans of dragons. They are optimistic. They see the good in everything, and they see the best that can possibly be. And so I don't know. That doesn't really help. But I guess when you put chaotic with assign chaotic to a alignment,
anything goes is kind of what I'm feeling like here.
I think that's probably the best we're gonna do. I think with character, when you pick chaotic neutral, it is generally a rogue and a very selfish. I'm gonna get mine, and that I'll help people if it helps me, or if I develop an affection, but I'm not, and that doesn't seem to fit with the motivations of this.
No,
dragon.
this is definitely a different interpretation than that.
Yeah. So, again, one of the things here I thought was a nice little. I like that they put this in just because it's an interesting little facet. Is that they will raise orphan dragons, particularly whites.
Yes.
And particularly with the goal of trying to convert them or fix them and make them less, because they don't like, you said they don't like frost giants, they really don't like white dragons either, but that's because of as when we get to habitats, essentially the same.
Right.
So so what else I've got some other stuff, but
that was really the main thing that I had was that about the white dragons. And I think you said it, but just to reinforce it is, when we talk about the positivity that these crystal dragons bring, they're trying to take evil out of the world by it did say in one of them, and this is something that before we started also that I mentioned, that I saw what felt like contradiction between the 5e Fizzbands, which is where most of my, and I think your research came from, and then the Forgotten Realms wiki, which drew a lot from the Dragon Magazine and the Monster Manual 2 from 3rd edition. Those stories seem to make the Crystal Dragon feel a little more chaotic neutral.
Okay.
Because it did say they would steal those white eggs, whereas Fizzbands said that they would collect abandoned eggs. There's a little bit of a difference there. And so I felt like the earlier rendition...
Fizzband is a dragon himself, so I guess he would want to put the most positive spin.
Well, that is true. Got it. Yeah, POV. But the earlier renditions of the Crystal Dragon make it feel a little bit more chaotic than the 5th edition version of I felt like. And that's where the contradictions came, is I felt much more chaotic neutral in the description of them from the past than the 5th edition. But that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a
Good
good point.
though, librarian.
Thank you.
Looking at your sources, comparing them.
Let me see, I'm looking to see who the lead designer is, James Wyatt of Fizzbands. Did he intentionally change some angles because it's Fizzband telling the story?
Well,
or did they clean it up because it's 5th edition?
Having talked to Adam Lee, and we know that he likes taking the position of these characters when he writes. Maybe other people do too.
Yeah. So I thought that was really an interesting aspect of the White Dragon that really kind of... Oh my gosh, yes, the Crystal Dragon. I've now called it the Chromatic Dragon and the Crystal Dragon. What's next?
You can't see it, so it's hard.
I can't, it is. Anyway, I thought that was a really cool feature of the Crystal Dragon, and that is that they try to take evil out of the world by changing a new generation.
And to fine-tune that a little bit, what I found is it's not so much evil for its own sake that they're opposing, it's the destruction that it causes. They hate destruction anywhere in their abode, and that's why they are enemies of white dragons and frost giants. And the frost giants, I'm wondering if that's just because of the long history, they don't even try. But with white dragons, they see a kindred, species or that they want to try to help and redeem. Some other things that I like connected with their habitat, which we'll get to, but it won't be a surprise by the time we get there. Their favorite pastimes: to emerge at night, lie on the ground, and watch the stars.
I love that.
And again, part of their abilities do kind of go around astrology and things like that. And also, I found that they like playing in the snow, throwing snowballs, making forts, which I heavily identify with.
Childlike.
Yes. And just want to have fun. They are irresponsible as parents. That's the chaotic.
Yeah.
But kind and nurturing. So they're the German parents. Like, you just got to learn on your own. You want to smoke? Go smoke. You won't like it, but
Yeah, that I caught that as well, and I thought that was funny because of this nurturing aspect of white dragons that they want to raise white dragons, but their parenting style is very loosey goosey,
which is probably why it doesn't work.
Yeah, probably. Okay, good point.
You need a blue dragon or something like that to really lay the law down.
That's right.
So those are some things that are again just some fun color added to. I mean, it gives you such a good handle on the personality of the dragon, I think. So other things about it, it does not, as you mentioned, they really, really, really hate fighting. They will avoid a fight at almost all costs. And if they attack, if they are actually attacked, if they can't get out of it, they're going to retreat. But it's not cowardice. This is what I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Is, again, for a chaotic, it's a little surprising, but they will retreat and study.
Yep.
And then counterattack.
Right.
But that does fall in line with just the fact that, I think it's easy for me to sort of forget this, is the high intelligence of all dragons.
That's true. Which we've talked about before in these shows is what makes it hard to run them sometimes, is because they would know more than you would.
Yeah, they have
Or
to
I
be.
would.
They have to be 5 or 6 steps ahead of the players. I can't do that.
I'm not good at that. I am not good at that at all. I suppose a really good chess player would be good at something like that because they think in those terms. The only thing I ever think about in the future is due dates are 3 weeks from today.
Yes. We're playing in 7 days. I better start thinking.
Yes, that's right. I'm more like 7 hours. Oh boy, I better get ready.
Find a cool monster, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe a crystal dragon. I really like that part too about the crystal dragon is they retreat to watch and to learn, and I thought that was cool. This creature had a lot of like really poignant things that really resonated with me, and that is one of them. That they're not cowards, even though a lot of times you think someone's trying to avoid a fight because they're a coward. Not necessarily. They're smart enough to know that fighting hurts and fighting is destructive. And hey, if I'm running, it might not be because I'm afraid of you. It's because I'm going to figure out how I'm going to come back at you.
Yeah.
I really like that aspect of
I
that.
don't want my pretty scales to get scratched.
That's right. Jeez.
Did you find anything? This is fun, but I'll let you do it first. What they eat?
No, I didn't get that.
Okay. Well, the obvious one is that they prefer to eat gemstones and metal ore, but they can eat air to survive.
I totally missed that.
The image of chopping just on.
Or just walking forward quickly with your mouth open.
Like a balloon.
Yeah, like a balloon. I missed that. That is incredible. So wait, say it again. Minerals, gems.
Gemstones and metal ore.
Metal ore, okay.
Yeah.
Or air.
Or just air, yeah. So.
Okay.
So.
Don't know what to make of that.
One other thing about their methods of fighting, just should have put that earlier, but didn't organize quite perfectly. They prefer to take to the air and they have breath psionic weapons.
I saw that. I wasn't
and spells.
So it's mental damage?
Yeah, we'll probably get that when we do the stats and abilities.
When I saw that breath weapon, I was a little not sure how that would work. So, okay, sounds good.
All right. So you are listening, you can probably guess their habitat is in cold regions.
Yep.
Although they prefer plane of air, but if they're here on the D&D plane, where most of the characters are going to find them, cold regions, they'll create a lair out of snow and ice, like a castle but open to the sky.
Right. They will also dig tunnels underneath, which is where they keep their hoard. And I thought it was interesting that they mentioned somewhere that they have like a digging skill that to create these tunnels. And I don't know if all dragons have that, but it was specifically mentioned here when it talked about them creating tunnels underneath their lairs.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, they probably all can, but I wonder if this is one that's
Has
a
a
little
special.
enhanced.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting. Connected to the plane of air, the lair always has clear skies and gentle breezes,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
kind of an interesting little detail.
There's another dragon, and I wondered if it was, I didn't go back and look, but if it was the amethyst. They can telepathically whisper and charm people as a lair action. When someone's in the lair, they can speak to them telepathically and charm.
And I think amethysts have kind of a heavier hitting ability to dominate like that.
Yeah.
And this is a little more suggestion and so that was Did you find how the vicinity of the lair changes?
Yeah. So that was where, is this where within are we like the regional area? Yeah. Where the
Regional effect. That was the word I was
regional
trying
effect. Yeah. I was going to say crystals. We talked about at the opening of the show, the quartz. Quartz will prominently grow within 6 miles of the lair, but not just anywhere coming out of rock, in the sunlight coming out. So it has to be in a sunny spot or a place where during the day sun would shine. So it's not going to be like in a valley or in a hidden underneath a rock. They will be in sunshiny spots. Let's see.
Thriving animal population. And this is, again, where I thought this does not sound chaotic neutral. Anybody within 6 miles of the lair who finishes a rest can potentially get extra healing, which is really cool. And again, it gives a different dynamic, I think, to the probable personality.
Yeah. All I could think was even the enemy, even an enemy of a crystal dragon would benefit from that.
Oh, and yeah.
So whatever that's worth, but that's kind of cool.
So their preferred treasure, as you would expect, diamonds and other clear crystals.
Yep.
But this goes into their abilities and things. But they like astronomy-related items, collections of prophecy, and magic items related to light, healing, and foretelling.
Yeah. This would be a cool horde to come across. I think it'd be definitely a very unique one. The one notable that I wrote down is they just love things that refract light. So I'm thinking of all sorts of different things that they might collect over time that you might find in there, and what kind of a shimmery sort of horde this must be. I even wondered if it would be cool as the DM to put in a room like this that it has like a hole to the sun, and so at a certain time of day, their entire horde would just like huge, bright, shimmery. I think of in Indiana Jones when he puts the gem down, and then the light comes at a certain angle through the ceiling, and it hits the gem, and this light goes shooting through. But this would just be an entire just glow of its horde, and how the crystal dragon would love to sit in its own lair at that time of day, and just sit there and watch its horde go into this gleaming, shining for moments.
I was thinking Isaac Newton must have been a crystal dragon. He's the one that first discovered or dealt with optics and split light with a prism.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other thing I thought, adding to your jumping ahead a little bit to role playing or whatever, I would imagine a crystal dragon would probably really love like stained glass windows.
Oh yeah.
And again, they're not clear, but the thought of total tangent, but there's the Chapel of Saint-Chapelle in Paris is actually a fairly small chapel, but the walls are almost entirely stained glass.
Okay.
So on a sunny day when you're in there, it's like being inside a diamond.
Wow.
So I thought that would be something they would
cherish. If you know you're going to go see a crystal dragon, bring a stained glass window. They probably really would like that. That's cool. I'm even picturing how if you stumbled upon the lair of a crystal dragon, or maybe not even a lair, how you might just find a crystal dragon rolling around in the snow enjoying a prism.
Yeah. Kind of
just in a little frolicky sort of way, just rolling on his back, holding a prism up, looking at it. They'd probably love that. That'd be a fun way to introduce how unique of a way that would be to introduce a dragon.
So before we get to their stats and abilities, they're notable named dragons. And this was a very short list.
It was.
Not very many at all. And most of the ones I found were from the third editions.
Same. I'm hoping we didn't check this before we started recording. I hope we chose a different. Did you choose one to talk about, or?
I've got a list of them. So.
Oh, okay. I chose one to talk about.
Okay. Why don't you do that first, and then I'll just quickly look at the others.
That sounds good. I chose this one. I don't know. Maybe it's the mood I was in or something. It's a really sad story, actually. The name of this dragon is Crystalonos. He was a very old crystal dragon and had a partner, a friend, a companion, who was an archmage named Tulrun. Tulrun of the Tent, to be specific. They would explore ruins and areas of the Netherrealm and the areas of the North, and just enjoyed each other's company, enjoyed the exploration aspect of it, and of course, being in the North, Crystalonos just loved the environment. Well, Tulrun went to the Abbey of the Moon and left the material plane for a bit, in which Crystalonos and Tulrun lost touch. In that time that Tulrun was gone, Crystalanos was slain by a great white dragon. I'm abridging this greatly. There's names to the great white dragon and whatnot, but when he was slain, the great white dragon saved the bones of Crystalonos as a trophy, which, as the story continues, we learn was a huge mistake, because Tulrun returned to the material plane and could not find his friend Crystalonos. So he started hunting around and sniffing around and discovered the lair of this great white dragon and found the bones of his friend. And so Tulrun left, plotted, and came back and avenged Crystalonos' death. But while he was doing that, while he was just fighting this great white dragon, a white wormling escaped the lair of the great white dragon and grew up and began its own quest.
I was going to say, he killed everybody, right?
Yep.
Like he wiped out the dragon's family, except for the one.
Except for the one. And so now that one has begun its own quest of revenge. So it's kind of a sad story.
They end up, we'll talk about when we get to their stats and abilities. They are kind of victims sometimes.
Yeah. So who are some of the other ones?
There's Rodel, one of the Thanes of Sardior, which is the ruby dragon. So that's, again, a deep cut, but the ruby dragon is served by all, but it was dismembered or destroyed, or there's something going on there. Here's just because I have to attempt it. Sarindalaglathor.
Okay. Nice job.
Is also known as Lady Gemcloak and the Axe Mother. So a little easier to pronounce those two, but she lived.
Yes.
She lived beside a tribe of dwarves, and sort of interacted with them. Again, very, very, very short history. She had a better story. She was hated by a red dragon, which should be pretty bad for a crystal dragon, but she did defeat him. But she succumbed to the rage of dragons. I think that's an event. In the deep past, in one of the worlds of D&D.
I believe so.
And felt bad about it, so she went to the plane of fire to try to atone for the destruction that she caused, because they hate destruction. And then there's Yarny. Again, not much here. Very nice, helps others, tries to convince young white dragons not to be so mean.
Sounds fitting.
And then Claruuotor, the guardian of a noble genie family. And that's pretty much it. There's, the other ones we've looked at so far had
long lists.
Dozens that we didn't go into, but just dragon after dragon after dragon. But these are rare. They're not going to appear very often, and they're in remote areas.
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing we didn't mention about them personality-wise is they are an isolated creature.
Yes.
They prefer not to be around others, but interestingly, I can relate to this. When they do see people or other creatures, they are quite friendly with them and will want to talk to them and learn what they can from them. But just in general, they would prefer to be an isolated sort of creature.
Yes. And that does kind of then lead us into their stats and abilities, because I believe they are the weakest of the gem dragons.
Okay.
And therefore much more vulnerable than some of the others, like the amethysts that we've already looked at. Even in their ancient form, their CR is 19, which is high,
formidable,
but not compared to the other ancients. They have psionic abilities. They can possibly see the future or get hints of it. You've talked about the fact they can charm visitors in their lair.
Yes.
They can teleport at will up to 60 feet. They've got an interesting list of... Oh, this is where I saw a little bit of contradiction or difference.
Oh, okay.
Fizzbands gives a list of these spells: Command, Divination, Greater Restoration, Hypnotic Pattern, Invisibility. But sources other than Fizzbands give a very different list of spells.
Oh.
So, and what I thought was interesting, these spells are not damaging spells.
Correct.
They're very much healing, future telling, avoiding combat. Do you want to talk about the breath weapon, or you want me to?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So this I thought was kind of an interesting thing. Scintillating breath is what it's called.
See that.
And it's radiant damage. This is kind of cool. It's radiant damage, but in addition to that, the dragon gets up to 25 temporary hit points.
Oh, nice.
That. So it's sort of self-regenerating.
Yeah.
In some cases, it can blind a person temporarily as well.
Okay.
There's one other legendary action that I thought was kind of...
Is it the Starlight Strike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's cool. It reminded me of the moon. What's the...
Moonbeam.
Moonbeam, yeah. To where it can create a searing beam of starlight from a point that comes down into, I think it was a 10-foot... I think it was a 10-foot circle, but it can shoot, is that what it is? It can shine from 60 feet away. So I thought that was kind of a cool feature. This would be a great dragon to put into cinema.
Yes.
I kept thinking that as I was reading that this would be a very cinematic dragon, really fun, like very visual in its fighting or in its just life. And I go back to its lair and what that would look like. So, yeah, I think that's cool.
It does 11d6 damage, and it's a dex save rather than attack roll. So that's...
Oh, right.
Again, so it's the equivalent of a breath weapon, actually.
It is.
Maybe not quite as... Not cone-shaped, so it can't quite catch quite as many people, but still... significant. So one other thing that's sort of interesting, they can create a luck scale.
I don't know what that is.
So
I didn't see that.
From one of its own scales, it can detach it and give it to someone, and it functions temporarily as a luck stone.
I did not see that. That's cool.
So again, sort of the generous...
That's a cool... Okay, so that leads into our conversation on possible ways to use a crystal dragon. How cool would it be to be given because they can shape change, right?
Yeah, I think they all
when
they get to a certain age.
So if you encountered a crystal dragon who had its scale and was questing someone that could give its scale to somebody,
that might be the hint that you're dealing with.
Yes, with something more than what you're seeing. Ah, that's cool. That's fun.
Okay, so role-playing.
Yeah.
I saw them as helpful and solicitous and maybe overly so.
Oh.
I could see them... Again, this is where they... Like, brass dragons can be a little annoying because they don't shut up.
Okay.
And I'm seeing this as sort of the same thing. Where are you going? Can I help you with anything? You know what's going to come? I can see things in the future. Do you want to hear? Come on and sit and talk. I'm in a snow fort. Climb in. It's really cool.
Want to have a snowball fight?
Cool. Yes. So I could kind of see that maybe if you want to go that direction.
Oh, that would be fun.
More generally, just it would be a fun to play sort of a. I mean, this is one of the kind NPCs that really is just going to help.
Right. I love the playfulness aspect of it that you're pointing out there. I thought about them being stargazers and familiar with the sky, that there might be some sort of a role that they could play in travel, where maybe you're on a ship or you're a captain of a ship in the north and you're trying to locate this certain area, but you cannot identify by sky, by stars, how to navigate to this location. Maybe there's a crystal dragon en route that you could go to consult with. And then then you get into stuff that you're talking about where you just want to get to where you're going, but this crystal dragon, he'll tell you, oh yeah, I can help you, but let's do this first. And then how you could have sort of not side quests, but like have a little bit of role-playing fun while you were trying to gain information from this crystal dragon as to how to navigate to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of is leading into how to use in the campaign as well. And one thing I thought of is if you wanted to go down this road, sort of a natural pathos where maybe you have a white dragon raised by a crystal dragon, but it turns against it in adulthood and hunts it. And maybe the party has to help the crystal dragon against its former protege. You definitely want to do this with higher level characters, because that could be a cool adventure hook where you have to protect a dragon.
Yeah. And okay, so that leads me to, sorry, I'm jumping back and forth between possible adventure and possible roleplay, is what if you came across a melancholy crystal dragon who wasn't playful or wasn't himself, and you had to figure out or find what it is that's causing this crystal dragon to not be a positive.
That'd be fun for kids.
Yeah, and how
even
to
lower level, because
sure, yeah,
it might not be.
And maybe it's something with, I don't know, a weather-based thing or something. I don't know, something that's keeping it from reaching the positive plane and have that.
Yeah, it could be that.
So, but I guess that's both role play and adventure possibility there. Building off of your white dragon idea, I had what if a crystal dragon quests the group to go retrieve a white dragon egg? Like the crystal dragon has kind of run its course and the white dragon is expecting him to come back to the lair. And so he knows that there's another egg, but doesn't want to do it himself or herself. And so sends the party to go retrieve the egg from the white dragon lair.
Or chaotic nature. I've got to build this fort. I don't have time. But those eggs are going to hatch.
Yes.
I need you to get it.
Right.
Bring it back here.
I have my very important business of building my snow fort. Go do this for me, please. Yeah. So that, or the party finds a white dragon egg and doesn't know what to do with it. I don't know. There's some things that you could do with that white dragon, crystal dragon relationship.
Mm-hmm. And again, white dragons, that'd be an interesting play off each other, because, I mean, dragons aren't dumb, but if there is a dumb one, it is the white one.
Oh, okay.
So, just brutish and vicious and doesn't talk, doesn't care, and this very sort of bouncy, fun.
Right.
So, well, that's all I've got on them. Anything else?
Same. Nope. That's the end of my notes as well. Although I've noticed in Fizzbands, I was a little disappointed. Fizzband, he must not have had just the right artist to draw a crystal dragon, because on the page that introduces crystal dragons, it's a red dragon destroying a town. And I looked at that and I was reading and I looked at it and I was like, that is not a crystal dragon. And so then you flip a couple pages to the wormling page and they have a picture of a wormling in its grayscales. Mm-hmm. In the sky, there's a dragon flying that looks to be a little more translucent, but I'm like, couldn't we had a good ancient dragon crystal ancient dragon picture. That would have been cool.
I guess that'll have to be an AI task for me.
Ah, yes. Check the YouTube page when you get this show, because I bet there will be a crystal dragon in there. Hopefully AI can figure it out.
Yeah. And I gotta say, I mean, this is just me, and you can put me in the box in the corner, but there's a lot. I guess I just want pretty things. A lot of the dragon designs, I don't love. I mean, I get it. They have the horror, it's not horrifying visage, but it's frightful presence or whatever.
Right.
That almost all of them have. So I guess they have to be kind of, in some ways, ugly or frightening.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly for like Crystal Dragon, I think it should be sort of elegant. Like there should be some nice lines to it and everything, and it's got kind of a pug face, I feel like, when you look at it. So
I do not disagree with that. The Crystal Dragon should be all those things that you just described. Although I will say, there are some great images of dragons, not crystal dragons, but dragons in the 2025 Monster Manual. In fact, every full-page art piece is dragons.
Nice.
In that book. And then there is a magnificent, I don't know if it's in Fizban's or where it is, there is an awesome picture of Tiamat that just shows the enormous size of it.
I don't know how artists do that. It's the same size page, but you just know
the enormity.
Even if there's not like a person there for reference, it feels enormous. I don't know how that's amazing to me.
Yeah, I don't know, but and there's a Red Dragon one that's like that as well, where it's kind of coming out of the clouds and there's a party. I think there's a little village, and you're like, how? You look at it, you're like, how could you possibly defeat this thing in a physical manner? It has to be magical. Mm-hmm. Like you have to defeat a dragon magically. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. There's times I look at some of these pictures, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. I mean, then you get into the Tarrasque, who supposedly is even bigger than any dragon, but I don't know about that.
Yeah. I think that's just there for comparison's sake.
I think so, too.
We're supposed to actually beat it.
So, anyway, well, this has been fun. Now I want to go make a snow fort and throw snowballs and roll around looking for ice crystals and icicles and hold them up to the sun. Crystal dragons seem like they have a lot of fun, potential for role play.
Yes.
Probably the most of any of the dragons we've talked about,
yes.
At least for me.
Yeah, from the ones we've talked about so far.
You're really good at playing those, and nothing to say about personality. You're really good at playing like those, I can't think in those manipulative ways, but you can play that NPC really, really well. I can't. But a crystal dragon, I think I could do that.
Yes.
I think I could do that. And I think a lot of people could do that and have a little bit of fun. So check out those crystal dragons. If you played one or you're interested in playing one, we'd love to hear your experience of prepping and running those crystal dragons for your campaign. But if you need to reach out to us, teachersinthedungeon@gmail.com. It's a great way to do that. Send us a note there through email. Or you can join us on the socials, Facebook and Instagram, Teachers in the Dungeon. On X, we are at Dungeon Teachers. And then, as mentioned earlier, we have YouTube page, Teachers in the Dungeon, there as well. So, for Dan, I am Tom. This is Teachers in the Dungeon. And until next week, keep rolling those 20s.